In this video, we'll be installing NVChad, which is a configuration of NeoVim in Arch Linux. If you would like to follow along with the instructions, and I have a lot of extra useful information, you can go to github.com, Programming Rainbow, and this one's going to be called NVChad, and it's 2.5 because there is a breaking change between version 2 and 2.5, so this is the newer version. This also assumes that you already have a terminal set up, which is pretty easy. You probably already have a terminal set up, but in the prior video, we did set up Alacritty terminal and a nerd font installed, and we have JetBrains Mono Nerd font already installed. So that was in a previous video, but there isn't really too much you need before this one, just a nerd font and some type of terminal. So I kind of want to just show what this is going to look like. I'm going to pull my own version down just to show what this is going to look like first, and then we will actually back up and use their version. This is going to show the very first boot up of this, so it's going to actually pull down everything it needs, configure everything it needs up and running like it's the very first time you're running it. So I'm going to make sure I remove local state NVim and also local share. And now we're going to start NVChad for the first time. And I'm going to go inside the folder, just so when it does start up that we can look around. I'm just going to say in Vim, and this is the very first time it's starting up. There's no prior configuration going on. I just pulled down what we're going to see at the end of this video. So this is going to need to reconfigure itself from the ground up now. So if we just sit here and wait, it's pulling down everything. Now it's setting up Tree Sitter, and it should pull down 3 more: Lua check, style Lua, and Lua LS. I'm just going to see if it's done. I'm going to show Mason to see if the 3 expected files or packages are installed. So I do have 3 packages installed, and you'll notice that theme had already changed on its own. The first package is an LSP package, which is Lua LS, and the next package is in linters, and it's Lua check, and the final package that's installed is in formatters, and I'm just pressing the numbers. I pressed 2 for LSP, 4 for linter, and 5 for, and this one is style Lua for the formatter. Okay, so those 3 packages are already installed. I'm going to pull down what you need automatically. I've set this up so it's going to automate this process. If you ever went to another computer or you've messed up your config and you need to pull it down, it's just going to set it all up to the way that it was already working. And we'll just go look at the file real quick. I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to do it with space X, space being the leader key. And now I'm going to use Control N to open up the side here in Vim tree. So if we just look at a file here, say plugins init, this is where all the main packages are configured. The tree sitter is right here, and it's saying tree sitter needs to make sure that it is loaded before the buffer is read or before there's a new file created. I've used this on several of them, but several other ones are on lazy, and we'll talk about this later. But I just want to show that things are actually working. So let's say I changed the indentation right here. I'm in normal mode now. I was in insert mode. I've gone back to normal mode, and I've set it up so it's happening every time I save the file. So if I hit Shift : right now and I hit W down here, it's going to save this file. When it saves this file, you're going to see that this part that I've removed the tab with is going to re-tab in, because that is how it should be in the style. Now, since this is the init Lua, it's telling me that I should reload this. We're not going to really worry about that right now. Kind of want to show a signature. So I have this signature pop up. This is basically telling me about this function right here. This is part of the LSP. So down here, you can see that the Lua_ls, which is the Lua language server, is loaded. So this Lua language server, that's what's running. That's what's giving me access to go to definition, and it can do autocompletes. If I'm typing in code, it can give me suggestions on what it thinks. So these are all the things that the language server does. And it also does things like it can do formatting as well, depending on the language server. It might also have that. And it might also have linting, where this one does have linting. But for this configuration, I've shut it off. And you'll see later on, well, right here, I've told it to shut off diagnostics, which is actually the linting. That's because I'm actually using a different linter. I'm using Lua check instead. and we'll talk about this. So we're going to work through this step by step. I just kind of wanted to show you around. So the language server is definitely working. The formatter is definitely working. And if we were to make say a typo, this is what the linter would find. So if I went like this right here, and I'm in insert mode, and if I go back to normal mode, it's going to automatically check when I flip back from insert mode to normal mode. It's going to do a linting check, and we're going to see an error. There we go. And if I hover over it, and if they've changed this now because this is part of a NeoVim 0.10, I believe, where they've actually made the key combination part of NeoVim. So NVChad has defaulted to the NeoVim version, but it's going to be Control W and then D. And that's going to hover me. Basically what's said here, sometimes it'll go off the screen. It's going to give me a hover diagnostic right here of what's going on. And this is actually coming from not the Lua language server, but the linter Lua check. But if I would have enabled the other one, it would have came from that one too. So I would have had both ways. Also, one more thing. I just wanted to show a quick overview. Let's undo this. I'm going to go into insert mode and back out. That's going to be fine, just to let the linter recheck. The other thing that you're seeing here is the coloring in these text. Okay, this is actually done by the highlighter. This is all controlled by TreeSitter. So most people already know about this, but if you don't know about this, the coloring is done by TreeSitter highlighting. Okay, so that's the kind of four things that we're going to set up. We're going to set up TreeSitter, we're going to set up a formatter, we're going to set up a linter, and we're going to set up a language server. And I want to make it set up so that when you add later for different language other than Lua, that it'll be simple and easy. And I kind of want to go through all the issues that I've had in understanding what's going on, because a lot of it's kind of like feels like a magic black box and it doesn't really make sense. Some people make it look really easy. They know exactly what they're doing. And then when I try to do it, I find out that it's way more complicated. So again, this is just a quick overview of what's going on. We're going to break this down and build it from the ground up, and I'll kind of walk through each part step by step. Okay. So I just want to show this is the end product of what we're going to have. It's going to be set up just for Lua right now because it is configured in Lua, but I'll do another video for different languages that will be adding on top of this one. So if we're developing for C or C++ or something else, how you would add those language supports in. Okay. So since we've seen this, I want to tear this down now and start from the ground up from NVChad. So to get out of here, you could press Q, or if you're in a file that hasn't been saved, you can press WQ, but you end up keep having to close things. So if you just push QA, this is quit all, which just gets you right out of there. So now, if you've already have a configuration, so I have this whole page set up here. You can read down it. Basically, I'm saying if you already have an NVim config and you don't want to lose it, you might want to move it over to an old file. Okay, so if you don't want to lose your old configuration, you might want to move it and save it as another name somewhere. Okay, I've put that up here just so that I'm going to go ahead and remove mine, but I'm also going to remove this local state and local share. This is stuff that is when it downloads things, packages, and it configures them and compiles or installs different things, they go into these two folders here. So this is where the config is. These two folders are where things get downloaded to and put in or cached to. So I'm going to remove all three of these, and then we are going to start with first what packages we need installed. Let's just remove the packages first, and then we'll remove those folders. So I'm going to do an RM on this local share so that it's the tilde, which is my home folder, and then .local, which is the hidden file, share, and then NVim. You don't need to back this up as another name. You can just get rid of this. And there's another version that is state. And then for the one that you want to move, this would be config NVim. If you care about this one, you might want to move it to another file name. Let's say something like this. I just put an old or whatever name that you want to use. We can just do that real quick. So that's actually gone. This directory I'm in shouldn't even exist anymore. Let's see if it does. Okay, cool. So it's gone. The whole thing's gone now. Okay, so there are some packages we need. If you followed my last video and you set up Alacrity and you have it doesn't matter if you have Fish set up or not. Bash is totally fine. None of that really matters. But as long as you have a terminal set up and you have a nerd font, that's what you really need prior to this video. So we're going to need NeoVim. We are also going to need Unzip. I found that NeoVim uses Unzip, but Unzip is not installed on the default Arch Linux installation, and it's not installed on what I showed in my previous videos to install, so we're definitely going to need that. Now, since I'm using Lua Check, which is something that they're not using by default in NVChad, they're just using the Lua LS server, the Lua language server, Lua_ls. They're using that one specifically to do linting, and it doesn't matter. But since I'm using the other one for linting, we do need Lua Rocks installed. And then these other two here, these are based on whether you're using X Windows or Wayland. If you're in X Windows and you want to be able to copy and paste between NeoVim and your environment, or vice versa, you're going to need Xclip if you're in X Windows, and you're going to need WL Clipboard if you're in Wayland. I believe you can just install both of them on your system without any issue, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I believe mine are already installed. I've put the needed switch down here, so it's just going to tell me it's installed. And, oh, I didn't install this one. That's fine. Okay. So those are the kind of prerequisite packages that we need. Now, we're going to be using an NVChad. NVChad is this is NeoVim. If you don't know what NeoVim is, neovim.io is the webpage. NVChad is a pre-configured version of NeoVim. It's got all the kind of goodies. I really like how it's all set up, and I didn't have to figure out how to do all that stuff. Some people that know exactly what they're doing can set up everything, but it's a little bit above me. So all this kind of great stuff where it's already kind of set up as an editor out of the box, almost an IDE. That's why we're using NVChad. But there's other ones. There's LunarVim. There's some other ones. It's not really important to me. I just want one that works. So right now I've been using NVChad, so that's the one I'm working. So this is the page for NVChad, and I believe, if we go to install, it's going to tell us different instructions for installing. This is the one right here. It's just a git clone, and we're just cloning the GitHub NVChad starter, the starter repository, and we are putting it in config nvim and then launching nvim after it. So they're assuming that you already have NeoVim installed and that you have Unzip and other things needed. We're not going to do this next step down here that says run install all. This will basically tell Mason to install everything that it needs to install. And sometimes you actually want to use packages that are on your system and not on Mesa. So I'm not going to be doing this step. And it says you can delete the Git folder, so it's not, there. And down here it has the folders that you should remove. The config. Again, if you have an old one, you might want to change the name of it so you can bring it back. And the second two ones don't really matter. Okay, so I'm going to just take this command right here. This is actually also this is in here as well. And this page, we're going to be looking at it. So I'm going to close this NeoVim here in the NVChad page now. We're done with that. But this what they allude to is this starter, this NVChad starter, and the internal NVChad internal one. We're going to be looking at both of these later. So right here, I'm going to use that command that they said. Okay, so I'm just going to run that command that they had on the site that grabs the repository for NVChad starter, and it just copies it into your .config nvim, and then it runs it. So here it is, git clone. I just copied it straight from the web page. And this is their NVChad starter, and it's cloning it directly into config nvim. So nvim cannot exist when you run this command. If you run this command, it's going to complain that the folder already exists. Right now, it does not exist. And after it gets done cloning it, these two ampersands, this is an and. This says if the first command completed successfully, go ahead and do the second command. So if this command right here completes without an error, then this second command will run. That's what the two ampersands mean. It's saying if the first one fails, the second one will not run. So the NVim will only run if this first command completed successfully. It looks like it did, because it looks like we're getting... Now this looks a bit like what we saw in the beginning, but it's not going to do the same thing. This is going to give us just the stock NVChad. See, tree sitter, it's probably done now. So to close this, I'm going to use space X, which is leader key, and then close. And then Control N for the side. Oh, we're not in our... I'm just going to quit it and go into the folder. We're not in the configuration folder. Okay, so right down here it's complaining about Lua language server is not installed. Now I'll just show it here in a second. If I would have done this Mason install all, and that's a capital M, capital I, capital A. If I would do this, it would actually, well, I'll just do it, and it'll show it installing StyleLua and them. So you have to manually tell it to do that. But again, I don't like this, because if I have a language server that is actually my package manager, and they're trying to download one, they don't work together sometimes. Sometimes the one on your system works correctly and the one that is coming from Mason doesn't work, but you still want to configure it. So Mason will say, hey, everything you're trying to configure, I'm going to go ahead and download that. I don't want it to do that. So we're not going to be doing that at the end. So I'm going to close this again. And, you know, this is a different theme right here. I think it's in here, is it? Yeah. So it's using OneDark right now. And it's in... So right now, the folder that we're in is the hidden config folder in Vim. That's what all of this is right now. This is all inside there. And we're looking in the Lua folder, because all configuration is done in Lua and NeoVim that we're doing. And inside of here, there is a Chad RC. Now, I'm not going to change anything in here, but I can just tell you the theme right here gets changed. So if I were to change the theme, which it's leader... you can see different options here that you can choose from after I press leader, which is the space key. But T means that there's more to it. So if I press T, now I'm going to see Telescope and VChad themes. There it is. I've set it to Capuchin. Now if I were to reload this, it should now say what it is. So I think it's in VChad. Now it says Capuchin. And you'll see over here that it's X'd out, and you'll see lines here. This is all because Git is here. So it's basically saying I'm making changes to this. We don't need Git. So I could delete it in the command line, but I can actually just delete it over here. If I just press, if I'm selected on it, my cursor's on it. If I press D, it'll say remove down here, remove Git, yes. And I can just remove it there. So yeah, so that's the theme. I'm not going to change anything in this file at all. I just wanted to show you where it is. If you're interested, it's in Chad RC. I'm not going to do anything in this file. I'm going to close this file. I'm wondering what I did here, so I'm going to close this, restart it. So yeah, so I'm not changing anything in there. Let's go down and see what we're doing here. We have set it up. And I also put, if you just want to grab my version real quick, which will probably become out of date with their actual version at some point. So maybe you shouldn't do it, but you can just grab my version directly. That was what we saw in the very beginning. So we're going to edit the options. The reason why we're doing this is because right now they have it set up for, well, I'm going to show you where this is actually coming from. We cloned this NVChad starter repository, but there's an actual, this actually references behind the scenes something else. There's settings that they've set under the hood that you don't really see. And the way to see them is to look in a different repository, to look in Chad, NVChad/NVChad. So that's on GitHub. And this is going to actually show you kind of what it looks like under the hood, what's kind of hidden from you. So if we go into Lua NVChad and we were to go into options, I believe it is. Yeah. These are the options that are set. Okay. And I'm interested in right here in the indentation. I do not like these 2 space indentations. That's my personal preference. I do not like that. I just want everything to be 4. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. So I'll just show you the same file over here, the one that we've basically downloaded right here in options. This is the file. So this is kind of the file you get to configure, and this is the file that is being referenced under the hood. So I want to change this, I don't care about changing all of it. I just want to change these 2s right here to 4s. That's the only thing I'm interested in. So these are both in the NVChad, but one's NVChad Starter, which is what you get when you download it. And the other one is what's happening under the hood, the NVChad/NVChad repository. That's kind of where you can see where their defaults are, what's happening that's kind of underneath what you see. So that right now, so if we go into this config nvim lua options.lua file for us, which is right here, this options file right here, what I want to do is I'm going to use this right here. It says add your code here. Right here, this is commented out. If I want to uncomment this, I can press leader and then /. That uncommented it. Now it's telling me that it's not being used. That's fine. So what I'm doing is instead of me typing in vim.o. just like what's in here. Oh, sorry. They're using it as well. They've set O to Vim. They've set a local option to be vim.o as O. So if you didn't do that, you would actually need to type out the whole thing. So yeah. So I'm going to use that since it's already there. They've already put it there for me. I'm just going to uncomment it and use it. So what the changes I'm making is right here. I've taken this to this, and I'm just making these changes right here. So I'm just going to copy that and put it in there. Whoops. I made a pasting mistake. I need to paste with P, because that's how you paste in normal mode in NeoVim or Vim or Vi or anything. So if I didn't want to use this above that I uncommented, I would have to do it like this, vim.o, right? And you can also do it as opt as well. This is a global, and I'm just going to, since that's what I'm referencing, that's what I'm changing, I'm just going to keep it exactly the way it was. So this is going to override those other settings. And I'm just changing those 2s to 4 and nothing else. And I'll show you kind of where this is. If we go into, let's just go into here real quick. See how this is set to 2 spaces. If I press tab right here, I only get 2 space tab. So if I press leader F and then M, I'll manually format. And you saw how my tab, see my tab is way over. So if I press leader F M, it's going to format it. It's using style Lua to format it. I have to manually do it right now, but I don't like that. I don't like any of this stuff, this two step. If you do like it, just leave it. You know, you can leave this option file alone. You don't have to change this. You just don't do this and it'll be on 2, but I'd like it to be 4. So I'm changing this to 4. So I'm going to save that. Now, if we were to, so I'm going to do WQA just to close the lot and reopen it. And I'm going to go back into that file that we were just in. Say this one, yeah. The changed is how my tab is going to act. So right now, if I were to tab, let's get rid of this tab. And if I press tab, I actually get 4 spaces. But then if I go and put leader FM, it switches it back. So basically, it's overriding what I have chosen. And that's because Conform is using style Lua. So that's just basically changing what I want to happen. I want my tab key to be 4 spaces, and that is being changed now in options. And it's not changing style Lua. Style Lua is just going to, every time I format it, it's going to switch it back to 2. We're going to see that in a minute. But anyway, so if you wanted to change your tabs to spaces and make them 4 spaces, this is how you do it. They're set by default to 2, and that's what has been done here. Okay, so now, as you saw, style Lua is the one that's formatting for me. It is still setting it to 2, so I want to change it to 4. And I also do not like how they remove the parentheses. Okay, I actually like to see the parentheses. I know it's a little bit more symbols to show, but it means at a glance I can see exactly what's going on. I know exactly what a function call is. So I'm going to comment this one out, and I'm going to change this to 4. And this again is in their This is their stylelua.toml file. This is right in the top level. So if we go up here, right in the top level, here is this is what stylelua is using, and you can see the indentation is set to 2 right here. So I'm going to set that to 4. And right here, call parentheses. This is for parentheses around function calls. I'm going to comment this out. So I'm going to go into normal mode and use leader forward, and it's going to comment it out. So I didn't need to think about what kind of symbol I needed to use. So I'm going to save this, and then I will come back in. And now we can see if that changed things. So now I'm not going to press tab or anything. I'm just going to do the leader FM and see if it formats. Leader FM and see everything changed to 4 now. Okay. So now every time I press tab, I'm going to get 4. And then whenever I have a format, which we're going to make it do automatically, FM, it's going to fix it. Okay. So right up here, it says uncomment for format on save. Now this is kind of right. What this means is this event setup right here is buff write pre. That means before the buffer gets written to, before you're saving, it's not going to run the formatter. What it's going to do is load the format, conform. Conform is going to be loaded, not actually run. So if it wasn't loaded into memory yet, it will now be loaded into memory. That doesn't mean it's actually going to run. What actually makes it run, let's go into conform here. It's in configs. So we were in plugins init Lua. That's what initializes the plugins. Conform is what's configuring it. If you see down here, it says format on save. This is commented out. If we uncomment this, this is what actually makes it format every time I save. So the other one is what it's doing is it's make sure it's loaded. So let's go ahead and uncomment that. That'll be loaded, and I'll just show it to you real quick. I'm going to save it and quit. Okay, I'm going to go in. Let's go back right back into where we were. Okay, so now if I put some tabs here, and then I save it with W, nothing happened. Okay. It said down there that I need to reload, but nothing happened here. So what this is doing is making sure that the conform module is loaded and it's ready to go. The actual action of formatting your file that's not what it's doing. This is saying load this module on the event of the buffer pre-write, which is fine. So I'm going to do the format it right there. Okay, so if we go into the other file, and this is the configuration for conform. Right here, stylelua. So stylelua is being set up. But right here, if I select all of this and I use space forward, I'm going to untab this, and this is going to, they've already kind of set this up for us. And they said, hey, this is going to do the format on top. So the other one is just making sure it's loaded. This one's actually doing the action. So now if you can see how there's 2 spacing here and all this formatting. So you can see that this file is set up with 2 spaces, not 4 spaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. Okay. Since I've just uncommented this, it's not actually, I would need to unload it and reload it. So I'm just going to quit it and reopen it. That's the easiest thing for me to do instead of worrying about what things have been reloaded. So now this file right here, if I save it right now with this thing has now been turned on, the format on save has now been turned on. This should switch from 2 spaces to 4. So let's do that. So here's a W coming. There we go. So now we got format on save. That's really nice. But now we have at least the stylelua set up. I mean, they've already set it up for us, but we've just kind of unpacked it, maybe understood it a little bit better. But these other ones are commented out. I'm just going to leave them here for now because they're not doing anything wrong to me. This is examples of if you were doing CSS and HTML, you could use prettier. But stylelua is not automatically being downloaded, and we're going to take care of that later. But right now, this is just good enough. Right now, it's being loaded, and every time I save, it's going to switch it to the formatting style that I want. And it takes care of other stuff too. I believe if I put extra spaces maybe here, yeah, it's gonna fix all kinds of stuff whenever I save. Okay, so that's not too bad. It's pretty simple stuff. That was our first one in plugins init. And we just basically needed to uncomment that. So now in Tree Sitter, I'm gonna depart from what they're doing a little bit, and it's a little bit strange because they've given an example, but their example is not right. So I'm gonna kind of show you where this is coming from and what I'm doing with this. So there's one thing is I don't want to configure Tree Sitter in the plugins folder. So I'm gonna break it out into its own file called we'll just call it Tree Sitter. I've put here NVim Tree Sitter because that's the actual name of the module, but I'm just going to call it Tree Sitter, so I'm going to have to edit this. But we're going to break this out, but there's more stuff going on here. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. So in here, they have us an example here for Tree Sitter, okay? Now this has Vim, Lua, Vimdoc, HTML, and CSS. So if I want to look at what is already installed for Tree Sitter, I can do the shift colon. I can do capital TS and then capital I install, and I can say capital I info. Okay, and this will tell me what's been installed. And you see I have C, bash. What else is installed here? We got Lua doc, Markdown, inline, printf, which is not C printf, but it's actually for printing the output of Tree Sitter. We got Python, we got query, and there's the Vim stuff. So if I were to uncomment this, you would think that it would just be adding to whatever they've installed. So if I just uncomment this here, you think that's great. They're giving me an example, but this is not what's going to happen. What's going to happen if we look into here, if I go down here, this is exactly what we were seeing. That's from the starter. But if I go into the NVChad one, they did break. Okay, they broke it out. So this is what the configuration kind of look like. The problem is if we use their thing, we actually lose what was in here. We lose, I think, printf. Let's see. Yeah, this one is Vim, Lua, Vimdoc, HTML, CSS, right? If I switch to that one, it's not the same. It's not a one-for-one. I'm not adding to it. It's overwriting it. And what's more concerning is it's not using these either, I believe. And you kind of see this sometimes. So it's a bit of like you're not really sure what's happening under the hood. It's when I was comparing the difference between me just uncommenting their suggestion and having it commented, and I would reinstall the whole thing. You know, I would clear everything out and tell it to reinstall. Tree Sitter would not install the same packages. It was saying the default one is not being run at all anymore, and you need to instead make sure. So now I don't know if these two need to be there or not, but I do know this one for sure gets trampled on. This is getting trampled. So whatever is in here, if you want to keep it, which if that's the default, they should just be adding to the default. It's not what happens when you uncomment this. When you uncomment this, you lose some of their default, and I'm not sure if the other two is being used at all. So what I'm doing is I'm actually breaking it out like they did here. I'm breaking it out into my own config file, and I'm just duplicating this. So I'm just grabbing this directly, this part here, that includes all the options because I'm changing the options. So I want to break this out and recreate all the options to make sure I'm not missing anything. And so that's how I've done it. So I know that's a bit like complicated what I said, but basically their example is not a one-for-one. Their example doesn't recreate what is already being installed. So if I were to just uncomment this and use this, I would not get the same experience that I would get if I didn't have it uncommented. Okay, but I also don't want it being configured in plugins init.lua. I want it to be configured in configs the way that they're doing it. So I've broken it out. So basically in here, I'm not using this right here, this tree sitter. I'm not using this. What I'm doing is I'm telling this to load instead another file, a config file. So let's go over to mine. So this is how I'm doing it right here. This will be in plugins init.lua. Okay, so this is what I wanted to load, and I want to make sure that it is loaded on a pre-read or a new file, which I've kind of gone this direction on most of the plugins, besides the ones that are loading besides the ones that need to download packages. Put them on very lazy. So this one, it'll make sure that it's loaded anytime we're going to read a file, a new file that we've opened it up, or we're creating a new file. And this is all I'm doing to break it out is just right here. I'm just saying config equals this function, which is just requiring, and again, I've changed the name of this. It's just going to be configs tree sitter, not nvim tree sitter. So I'm just going to copy this. And we can kind of see what this would look like side by side. So here is their example one, and here's what I'm going to use. So it's the top line's the same, but this options gets implicitly passed to the configuration. So instead of that, config also gets implicitly called as a function, and this is just populating the options and then telling it. We'll see it in the next file that we have to make. It's telling it to configure it with those options that I'm using. So this is just allowing me to break it out. So I'm going to get rid of this. Oops. Since I want to undo what just happened there, I'm just going to press U. I'm just going to select these and delete it by pressing D or DD. This one right here, I want to move it, so I'm going to just DD on it again. It deletes it, but it also puts it in the buffer. So I'm going to put it up here at the top. And it doesn't matter if you leave it on the bottom or at the top. I just prefer it because I know it's going to be running first. So let me just see it up there at the top. So that allows it to break out into this other file, which I actually want to just call tree sitter. And it's going to be, the way you read this, it's going to be in the configs folder. And the file is going to be called treesitter.lua. The .lua is implicit. You don't need to say it. So that means we need to make a file over here. So I'm going to save this file here. I'm going to use my Control H to jump over here on the side, and anywhere in here inside of configs, I'm going to press A to make a new file, and I'm going to call it treesitter .lua. So treesitter.lua, hit enter on that, and now that file is created. We can open that just by hitting enter. And what I'm going to put in here is just basically what was there. This entire part right here. This is just what was inside, what I said I would copy out from where is it? Yeah, this is it right here. This is the same thing, except some of the names in here I've added. I haven't removed any, but I've added to them. But this code right here is a one-for-one to this code. The only thing I've done is made this go downward. Make sure you have a comma after each one. Even the very last one, you can put a comma just to make it easy so you don't mess up in the future. And I've just done them down instead of sideways. I've kept all the defaults that were there, but I've added some of my own. And I've added bash so that I can see bash files. I've added fish because I also use fish. These were this Lua docs, Markdown. I'm not sure if Markdown was already there, but Markdown, you might be seeing Markdown files on a Linux system, so that's there. Printf was already there. TOML files, we take a look at TOML files. Vim docs was already there. And sometimes you see YAML files. So I just kind of put those are kind of text files that you might come across just in everyday use in Linux. Just config files that you'll come across. So that's all I've done. I've just basically, these items, I've put them right here, and I've just put them in a local table called options. And then at the bottom, I'm loading it. I'm loading that. That's how we load nvim tree sitter configs. We'd run the setup with the options local table that I've just put in. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing. I'm just telling you I'm doing exactly what they're doing. It's just at the bottom, they have another bit of code that's hidden that's running this require. I'm just calling it explicitly. So I'm going to put that in here. And this is where you would add any new kind of languages for tree sitter. Now, tree sitter is just syntax highlighting. So this is going to give us our tree sitter can do other stuff, but we're using it for syntax highlighting. So highlighting is set to true, language to true, indenting. Okay. So I'll kind of want to show bash and fish off with this because you might run into some issues. So I'm going to save this. Now, when I close this and restart NVChad or NeoVim, it's going to grab these missing languages, bash, fish, markdown, toml, and yaml. It's going to grab these automatically. And that's just how tree sitter works by default. So that's nothing that I'm doing. It's just going to automatically. You saw it when I first set it up that it grabbed what the initial default ones that were there. It's just going to grab these two. So let's check that out. I'm going to quit it. And when I launch it again, it's just going to grab the new ones. I think it should. Maybe I did something wrong. Hold on. I think it gets run implicitly when you very first install. I'm going to put this on lazy. Oh, see, when I've loaded, yeah. I'm going to put this on lazy because of this. It doesn't really matter. This is not going to affect anything. It's fine. But they're installed now. It installed the 5 new ones. What happened was I was expecting it to automatically install when I started up NVim, but instead it actually installed when I opened a file, when I opened this file here, because it's on buff read pre, so opening a file or creating a new file. And on the other ones, this would be a real problem because I actually want everything installed first. The first time I boot it up, I want it installed, but I do know that tree sitter does get a run when you very first install it, no matter what. You don't have to open a buffer or anything. It does run automatically. So I might just leave that the way it is. Because if I could put it to lazy here, or to very lazy as the event, I'm going to leave it. It's going to work good enough for me because you're going to see that this is going to run no matter what without me even opening a buffer when it's very first installed. The other ones will not. So we'll set those to very lazy. But so that's going to give us tree sitter. I do kind of want to show you fish and bash and some issues you might run into. I'm going to change into a completely different thing for DTOS helper. I just need some fish files. Okay, so this DTOS helper.sh, this is a fish file. Okay, so if I open this, it looks pretty good. It looks like I got syntax highlighting, but when I scroll down a bit, things start falling apart. It's not right. It's all red. Now it's white. The colors aren't right. See, up here, if is purple and end is blue, right? Down here, if is purple, end is red. Now if is red, this thing is fallen apart, okay? It's not working correctly. Let me show you what it should look like. This one is named as fish. So instead of .sh, it's .fish. So when I open this one up, it looks similar again in the beginning, but when I scroll down, my if and end are all working now. The if and end, it hasn't broken down. So what it's doing is it was trying to read a fish file as a bash file. And for the most part, it is very similar, but they're not the same. So it starts falling apart. And we can see this if I were to find out what file type this is right here. I could go to colon and I could say echo, and I could do file type with the ampersand in front. And it's a fish file, right? This is the one that works, by the way. I could also do set, and I could say file type, but not equals. I could just put a question mark, and it will also tell me what the file type is, which is file type fish. If I go over to here to this one, and I give the same command, set file type with a question mark, it says its file type is an SH. Now, I believe SH just defaults to bash. If I try the other one, echo, file type, okay, it says SH. Now, down here, I put some helpful commands here. So You can do ts install all. You can install a single language. If I wanted to say install fish, if I wanted to do, say fish wasn't installed, I could say ts install fish. It's already installed. Do you want to reinstall it? You could also do that to update. ts update. And I could say fish, or I could say ts update, and don't put any language there, and it should just update everything. Everything's up to date. Good. I can disable highlighting and enable highlighting. So ts disable light. It disabled it for this one, not for the other one. Okay. I don't know why. ts enable. Maybe it's the last buffer I opened. I don't know. And ts enable highlight turns it back on. I don't know why it was different. These commands I'm just kind of showing you, but the one that I really want to show you is this one right here. This Lua print require now. So if I put this in here, I put colon, then when I paste it in, since I've copied the colon, I need to go back and delete one of the colons. And this colon, I believe, needs, these are, they don't have to be there, but I believe it goes like this. Yeah. So it's telling me that fish is being used on this one. But what about this other one right here that identified as sh, the set file type? So this one identifies as sh, not fish. So if I give that same command again, and I got to go back to the beginning. This is identifying as bash. So TreeSitter has loaded the bash. Now I kind of know what's happening, and you probably already guessed, but you could have a different language going on other than bash and fish, you know, where you're just really frustrated. Why is it not quite right? Or you're not sure if it's loaded the correct one. So this command will tell you, and I've put it in the page here. It'll tell you what is being loaded for this buffer, what TreeSitter has loaded. So I was struggling with this earlier. So this one's loaded as bash, right? Well, I can tell this one to be a different file type. So I can say set file type equals fish, right? Now, if we go down, it's fixed now. Now, let me set it to the other one so you can see it. Set file type equals bash. See how it's kind of messed up now? It's not, the echoes are not color coded right. It's got different colors going on, but they're not correct. So if I set it to fish and all the colors look correct, yeah, they're correct now. So some of the stuff is wrapping around. But anyway, if I were to give that command again, that I've changed the file type to fish, it says it's fish now. So it just me changing the file type told TreeSitter to load the other language instead. Okay, so if you ever come into this problem, that might help you out. So I've put all that kind of stuff here. You can also use inspect. Let's see. And what inspect does, it gives you some information, but if you notice here on the side, it says fish. It says fish. So that way I know fish is being used. If I change this file type, and now I inspect something, I'm hovered over choice. So I inspect, it says bash here instead of fish. So you could use that long command I used, or you can just use the inspect one and see if it says whatever language it's saying here on the side is probably the one that's loaded. Okay, so that's just kind of something that was throwing me. And basically if you see, I was naming my shell scripts as .sh, but they're shebanged as fish up here because this is specifically a fish script. TreeSitter doesn't understand that. TreeSitter sees .sh and just says that's bash, because most shell scripts are going to be bash. But if I explicitly give it the .fish, then it says, okay, now I understand it's fish. So you may have shell scripts that are written in one or the other, or other languages happening, and it might not be apparent which thing should load. You might need to forcibly tell it. So yeah, you can just do that. You can just set the file type and it should be able to handle it if it has a language for that. Okay, so I think that's everything on TreeSitter that I have for you. Okay, so we have this kind of language server going on. We're using the Lua language server, which is Lua_ls. And I kind of want to set it up as well. Let's see what it's looking like by default. I'm going to come out of here. I'm not really changing anything here. I think the only thing I'm doing is setting when it gets loaded on the read and the new file is what I'm doing here. Yeah, I just put a buff read pre and new file. That's all I'm doing. So I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to put it below TreeSitter and above conform. It doesn't matter that much. It doesn't matter which one's first, which one's second. Just for me, I'm just going to put it like this. So I'm not really doing anything. I'm just putting the event. But I will be doing something else where I need this here later. So it's basically just this one down here. I'm not doing anything that is different about it. It's getting the defaults from the built-in NVChad, and then it's loading the config. So I'm just going to remove this old one down here now. And also, I'm never going to use this one right here, so I'm just going to remove it. Okay, so nothing's happening here. Let's just save this. But I am going to change how Lua language server is run. So if we look in here, the LSP config, what it's doing is it's kind of setting stuff up for us to be able to do for us to be able to do different things, right? So right here they're making a local table that has HTML and CSS language server in it. This loop right here is just going to run through this table. It's doing a for loop, and it's just grabbing the index. We're ignoring the index with an underscore, and we're calling whatever the values are. We're calling them LSP. So this for loop has a LSP that basically becomes HTML, and then the second time through becomes CSS/SL, and it's called iPairs. That just means that this first one, this is not a this table here is just kind of like a list. It's not a key value pair. We only care about the value in it. It's going through a list, and it's just basically doing each of these things. It's creating this local on attached, local on init, local capabilities, and it's just setting these up for each one of these. Now, we don't care about these, so I'm not actually going to use these. But this is just basically, if you just had any kind of language server that you didn't need to do anything special to, you could just put the name in here and it would automatically go. Now, you don't see Lua LS here because it's actually done internally right here. Okay. So it's actually being set up here. And you can kind of see these on attached capabilities. These things are being passed in. And the settings here is kind of done under the hood. But I want to change a couple of things. So if we change a couple of things, we need to, again, recreate this whole table, basically. They have an example, I think. Oh, no, they don't have an example. So this one right here for TypeScript is just the same thing as up here, but not in a for loop, and specifically for TypeScript. So this for loop is doing this exact same thing, but with HTML and CSS/LS. So this is just an example. I'm not going to use TypeScript. If you are using TypeScript, you can just leave it there, but it's just an example. I'm going to remove it. This one I am going to use, but I'm not using these. I'll show you kind of what I'm going to do here. So I've kind of talked about we need to edit this file, the lspconfig.lua. And it says we'll be adding a table list of all the servers to configure. So I'm going to have two lists here. I'm going to have a list of servers that, like a complete list of all servers that are being configured. Because what's happening here, let me show you. If I undo here, if I'm running this, I actually have 4 servers that are being configured here. I have Lua is being configured under the hood, hidden from us. And then HTML and CSS LS is being configured with this for loop here. But then TypeScript is being configured right here. So that's 4 different ones. But this list, this table only has 2 items in it. So I actually want a table that has all the items in it, not just the stuff that's being configured by the default. So I'm going to make a second list. I'm going to have one list that is just, hey, anything that needs to do the default thing, do the default thing. But I'm going to have another list that's going to contain everything. And I'm going to save it inside of lspconfig so that I can access it later on. So I know all the stuff. This is because I want to be able to automatically use Mason to download these later. So I need to know how many things are being configured. I need a list of all of them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 lists. One list is just everything being configured. The second list is going to be whatever is using this for loop. This for loop will be anything using default configuration. The other table will be all configured servers, everything. So that I'm kind of explaining that here. I want that table of all of them for that I could use Mason LSP configs to automate the installation. And I used their defaults again. I went, instead of the starter, I went into the internals because I want to edit this. I want to edit the Lua LS, and I don't want to break it. I want it to keep working correctly, but I want to make some changes to it. So because of that, I'm actually going to take the same thing out. Because what happens here, right here, this require ls setup, when I make my own version, it's going to ignore this. And so whatever was happening here by default is no longer going to happen. So I need to recreate this. So you're going to see these lines here. You're going to see all the stuff in settings. I'm recreating it, because if you don't recreate it, then you're going to lose those capabilities. What I'm doing here is I'm taking the file that's already here, and then I'm adding in the Lua stuff. So that's what's going on up here. All of this is what's already in the file. Now this list right here, this is my list of all servers that are going to be configured. Every single server. So for my setup right now, it's just going to be Lua LS, nothing else. I don't need TypeScript server. I don't need HTML, none of that stuff. So my entire list of servers that are being configured is right here. My list of servers that are being configured with default configurations is just empty. But the list, the table is here, so you can add stuff to it if you want to activate this block. But anything you add in here, you should also add it up here, because this needs to be a complete list of everything. And that's what was already there. We've already seen this before. Now down here, this is just a recreation of what was under the hood for Lua LS. And the reason why is because I want to add Love support. So I need to add this third-party Love. But also on top of that, on top of adding that, that actually doesn't make it completely work. It still doesn't work when we do this. And it's because it still can't, the linter still can't handle Love and some other things. So I'm actually going to disable the linter on this and use the other linter. But this is still set up, so the language server still knows about Love 2D. And it still can give me auto-completion, go to definition, things like that. It still works as a language server, but the linting part will still complain even if this is here just partially. And it's quite annoying. I searched for 2 days on this, how to fix it, and there's just no fix. I ended up running into a bug report that I had put in like a year ago into the guy who writes the LSP config, the Lua language server. And that guy was so arrogant that they just never fixed it. There's no fix for it. So that is still a problem, and you can't communicate with them. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to overwrite the whole file right here, because this is already going to be here. This is still going to be here. This is slightly modified. I changed the name of the servers. I just changed the name. That's the only difference here. I've removed this and I've added in the Lua config. And then I've added in one other table up here that is all of them. So I'll paste it in and then you'll see them together. I'm just going to put it below. Okay, so this is duplicate right here, these top two lines. So I'm just going to remove them. Okay, now you'll see this instead of it saying local servers, it says lspconfig.servers. So I'm actually sticking a table inside of lspconfig that I will be able to access later on. Whenever this is loaded, any other package will be able to access this list that I'm creating. And this is a list of all servers configured. Okay, so this is a new list. Now we're not using TypeScript server, so I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so we have this this automatic thing right here where we have a table. Anything in the table gets automatically configured. So that I've just changed the name from servers to default servers. That just means I have this default configuration right here. When they just need to do the on attach, on init, and capabilities, they just need to plug these things into the server and nothing else is happening. We can just put it here. So it's really just the same. I've just changed the name of it, and I have nothing in the table by default right now. Later on, you will put other things. Not in this video though. Okay, so these are here. These are here. This is my table I'm creating. This is the one that's using the default for loop. Now this is my version of Lua LS. And we shouldn't need to actually, because I have this here, I can actually just say lsp config. I can do this. That should be fine. Because this right here is making a local variable. Oh, this shouldn't be here. I'm not sure what's happening with this. I think something got pasted when I wasn't paying attention. Yeah, that just shouldn't be there. I was just kind of wondering where but this doesn't need to be here because we already have this local. We're already requiring it right here. And so we have this lsp config as a local variable. And so now we can just lsp config and do the setup. But let me just save this file real quick because I think it's going to add in those. Yeah, it's added in those parentheses right here. This was because of the changes that we made in style Lua right here, where call parentheses was none. That was there initially, but I've removed that because I like that. If you don't like the parentheses, you can uncomment this and then it'll go back to the other way. But I do like to see them. That's just my personal preference. So what I have going on here is I have this disabled, and they also have this other thing which is a bit confusing to me. They have a global set for Vim, but they don't need it. So I'm going to enable this by commenting it out. So it should be enabled now. Let's just go in and double check it in the original version. Yeah. So the original version, they're using this Vim here as a global, so it doesn't complain about Vim, but you don't need to because it's already set up to work with it. So I'm just going to set it to there and just show you what it looks like. Okay. Everything. Okay, I'm going to show you what a love file looks like. Now we've added love down here. I just want to comment this out. I'm going to comment it out first, and then I'll show it to you. So you see that the Vim, these 4 Vim lines here, it's not being complained about, right? I'm going to comment this out, and it still will not complain about them. Okay, let it load. And yeah, there's no complaints about Vim. So we never needed Vim to be in a global. Okay. But I don't have anything here for Love2D. So let's load a Love2D file. Okay, we should get a bunch of complaints. There we go. Bunch of complaints because it doesn't know what love is. Okay. And there's 26 complaints here. Okay. Now, if I do kind of let it know what love is, these complaints will sort of go away. Let's see if we have auto completion as well. Okay, we got auto completion, we got draw, we got load. It might be kind of guessing what it's already seen in this file, though, actually, because those things are here. But anyway, let's go and try to fix it. So I'm messing with the LSP config right now. This is the language server, and specifically Lua. Now, this isn't actually doing anything. This table right here is literally just making a table. I'm going to use it in the future. It's doing nothing on this page right here. The only thing that's configuring Lua is right here, this one. So we know we don't need Vim. And we know that diagnostics is working right now because we don't have any other diagnostics. So it's definitely coming from Lua LS. Now, if I put this here, well, let's do the other one. Let's use the global. If I put the global here, I put love in here. I think I need a comma. Do that. Maybe even a comma here for good measure. Don't need it, but why not? So I'm gonna jump back into that other file. I've saved it and closed it at the same time. So now we'll probably have 4 errors. Okay. It's gonna be duplicate something. It's gonna be down here. Here we go. We got 4. I just want to try the little love command again. Love dot. We got the same stuff going on. Okay. Okay. So we got 4 errors. The problem is I've told it to ignore love, and it's not ignoring love. It still has these 4 errors, and I haven't seen anybody else that can kind of solve this. Even people who are showing off love in Lua and showing videos of it still have this problem. And it's only a minor annoyance, but it is kind of annoyance. It feels like you're not doing it right. So let's take this the other direction. Let's do there's a third party Lua extension for Lua_ls. Sorry. So let's use that instead of the global thing. So I'm gonna just comment this out again. And down here, this is one that we're adding now. So this is a third-party thing. I found this somewhere online. It is part of Lua_ls. There is a love third-party module thing going on, and this seems to be the right way to activate it. But I will get a similar thing as when I put it in globals up here. I'm going to get a very similar. I'm going to get the same 4 issues. Okay, it's loading up, and we still got the 4. Yeah. But look at this. When I type love now, I got a whole bunch of stuff going on. So our language server is understanding love now. It's cool with it, but we still have 4 annoying, right? So that is better. It is better. We got the functionality of the language server, but we still have this duplicate field issue going on. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. That's kind of why I've pulled this out. I've added the line under here. I've added to it. I've commented this out because it does nothing. The Vim doesn't need to be a global. It already understands Vim. So you put something in the global when you're telling it to ignore it. We don't need it to ignore Vim. So I've commented that out, and I've added in the other. But actually, I'm going to tell it not to use the linting part at all because I'm going to add in Lua check instead as a linter. But I do still have the third party. Let's close this out. The Love2D. I need to save the buffer. So I just kind of wanted to explain what I was doing, where I was getting it from. I am pulling it from what's under the hood to preserve how it should be acting. I want to preserve all the stuff that's acting. This is where later on you could put other stuff that you wanted to ignore. However, I don't have anything that needs to be here now. But right here, I'm going to tell it to ignore linting because I'm going to use a different linter. But I'm still going to get the benefits that we just saw of me being able to autocomplete and things like that for the language server having Love2D support. So I do want the support, but part of it, I wanted to just show how linters were installed. So I wanted a linter for Lua anyway. And part of it is the other linter doesn't give me the same problem. So we're going to use that one. So this is how I'm going to set this up. Okay, in the old version of NVChad, they were using null ls, and that has been null ls is deprecated now. So I've switched it from null ls to lsp config, conform, and lint. Okay, so that's the whole spiel about lsp config, and that's why I did that. So we've finished up everything. Now let's go on to the linting. That's the bit that wasn't. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with the linters, everything else. And I do have these pages opened up. I haven't been showing them, but basically here's NVim tree sitter, and you can read through tree sitter. And this is linked in my page to all of these pages. And these are the languages that are available. Okay. And here is NVim lsp config. And we've already done this, but this is the page for it. And again, it is linked, and there's lots of information here. There is NVim lint, which is what we're doing now. This is going to be the linter. And I did have some good time trying to understand the magic that was happening under the hood with this one as well. And there's different names. Sometimes the names don't line up to the tool. So there's the information here. So this is the one we're working on now, the NVim lint. So this is going to look very much like the other ones. This is the where I'm getting this from here is from GitHub. Okay. So if we look at GitHub and we look at this name right here and the repository, that's what it is. That's what it is for all of these. Okay. So that's the GitHub. The event when I want it to load is whenever a page is being opened or a buffer is being opened or a buffer is being created. A read pre or a new file. And I'm just doing the same thing. The config, I'm breaking it out into another file that's in the configs directory. So this looks very much like the others. I'm just going to copy it. And all of these are always going to be in the Lua and the plugins. In the init, that's where all these are. So we have tree sitter, we have lsp config, and I'm going to put it between conform and lsp config. So you see all of these. This is the GitHub page. So it's github.com/ and then neovim nvim lsp config. That's the name of the repository. Yeah. And it's the same. I'm telling them to accept on the conform one. The conform one does it on write. It's telling to load at least before I save a file. The other ones are when I read a file or I make a new file. And so nothing is happening new. There is no, I don't need to bring in a default or anything like that. That guy's doing an lsp config. It's just going to be like the other ones. So this is just saying I need the configs. It's going to be in configs. We're going to make a new file called lint. So over here, lint.lua. So let's create file. We've created that file. So this is the key value pairs of all this style is, let me see here. It's very much like the conform one. So these are key value pairs. So this exact same setup right here that we're seeing on the top here is what we're going to do on the other one. So it's linters by FT. That's what we're creating. This is from the, right here, is it Vim lint? Yeah, so this is where I'm getting this information from. They're key value pairs. And yeah. So we need to require that lint is loaded. So we're creating a local value lint. And then we're using that linters by feature. And what we want is Lua check for Lua. And we're going to configure this one. And I kind of want to show you how I came about this. But down here, we're creating an auto command. Basically, we want this this action to try to lint, which is to check, to tell the linter to check. We want this action to happen whenever we enter a buffer, whenever we write something, or whenever we switch out of insert mode. When we're in insert mode and we go back to another mode other than insert, we want it to check linting. So this is called an auto command. So we're creating this auto command and we're telling it when we want this auto command to kick off. And this auto command is just going to run one thing. It's going to say lint try lint. So this is the linter that we want to use. This is a specific table, and I'm going to show it to you in a second here. I had a hard time with this one. So I just want to make this file. The rest of it kind of follows how everything else is, you know, with the we're requiring lint, we're saving it as a local variable, and then so we can use that without having to say over and over again require. So this one down here, I'm going to save this file. I haven't saved it. And over here, I'm just going to post this. So I'm going to comment this out. And I'm going to save it. So what's going to happen here is if this is being used now as the linter, it's going to start complaining on anything that's love and anything that's Vim for linting. Okay? Because I've commented this out. This is kind of adding arguments to it, and we're going to look at this in a second here. So I just want it to work. So this is just making it work. This is telling it on the auto command when this is going to actually trigger each time. So I'm going to reload it. Now when we see anything that has Vim in it or love in it, we're going to see complaints coming from the linter. So I know this has Vim in it. I don't think this is all set up correctly, to be honest. Wait. Is lint installed? Oh, okay. It's not installed right now. So I'm doing a Mason install and Lua check. Okay, now it's installed. We're going to fix this later. But anyway, now you see that it's complaining about Vim, right? Because the linting isn't happening with Lua language server anymore. Now it's happening with Lua check. So if I do Control W and then D, I can get the hover version of and it says accessing undefined variable. It doesn't know what Vim is. So the linter is complaining about Vim. Now the LSP, the language server, knows what Vim is, but the language server is not doing the linting anymore. So I can still get autocompletes and everything else from Vim because it knows what Vim is, but the linter is Lua check and it doesn't know what Vim is. So this is where I came into a problem that took me like 2 days to figure out. And it's this. So this was the best answer I came across. And this is like how to make it not complain about Vim or about love, anything else, right? And I came across a couple things, but basically no matter what I did, it did not work. And there's some other posts. I don't remember all the posts now where I spent 2 days just everything that I could find on this digging into the internet and asking the AI models. I was getting nowhere. And it was really, really frustrating. So let's just try to add these in. If I copy these and I uncomment that, well, yeah, I'm going to uncomment part of this. Say that part, and I just put this in. I want to preserve what I had going on here. Okay, so we got globals, and we're basically saying, hey, these globals, vim, lvim, reload this, ignore these. I actually don't know what this bottom one is right here, but I kept seeing something like this, like 5 or 6 different posts, and then just nothing else at all. It was always something like this, and it needs to be in the arguments. So this is the linters. So if we go here, there is a how to pass arguments. So it has it right here. So this is a similar thing to what I'm doing. It's basically saying you need require lint, and then linters, and then the name of the language that you're doing with PHP CS here. And it's just, they're just creating a local thing that's PHP CS and then using it here. You could just do this whole thing here with args at the end. It doesn't really matter how they're just making this equal this local variable right here. And then they're using that local variable and accessing the .args table and putting stuff inside the table, right? So I hope everybody understands how kind of Lua kind of works on this. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the args table that we're accessing, and this is what you would put in for PHP. Now, we're not using PHP. We're using something else. So this is where I came across what I should be using for Lua check, these ones. And I did come across this, like 6 different people posting the same thing. And this just does not work. This is not right at all. So if we put this in, I'm gonna save it now. See, I'm getting this Vim complaint. So if I fixed it, I shouldn't get this Vim complaint, right? So let's write it and quit it. We'll go back into lint, and nothing's there. Look, wow, I fixed it, right? It looks amazing. I'll go into insert mode, come back. It looks like I fixed it. Let's look into a love file, because we know the love file should have like 26 errors at least. The linting for love hasn't been set up to ignore it. There's no love in here for the globals. And the Lua LS is not checking linting, so that's happening only here, not the other one. So let's go check a file. Okay. I got nothing. There's no errors at all. What's really happening is Lua check is not working at all. It's not doing anything. And I was fighting with this for a very long time until I was finally able to instead see what should be in that table. I need to know what was already in that table in the past, so when I modify it, it's still working. So I've put this here. So this command right here, we can do the vim inspect. This is just a Lua print. We're doing a vim inspect, and we're doing the require linters, Lua check, and there's the args. So this is the table that I've been trying to change. But before we change it, I thought maybe I should see what's inside this table to begin with, and then modify that. Okay, so let's try that. Let me. I'm not going to get it with the colon. I'm going to ignore the colon because that's already going to be there when I do the command. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back into the I'm going to go back into here, and I'm going to disable this whole thing because I want to see it when it's working. But I can tell you right now it's not working. It's not doing anything. There's no linting happening. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to get back into where it is linting. Okay. Now we have linting happening because this Vim right here is complaining. So we're good. Linting is working. So I'm going to paste in that command that inspects this table. So right up here, I'm doing that local lint, require lint, and then I'm taking that guy and it's right here, linters, Lua check, and then args. This is the table right here that I'm trying to modify. Right now, it's using whatever the default version of that table is. So let's find out what's that default version. Okay, now here's the default version. Formatters, plain, code. So this is setting formatters to plain, setting codes, setting ranges, and then setting a single tag. Now that doesn't look anything like this. So I can assume that these guys are all related to globals. I'm not actually sure what this is, but I'm assuming that these must be in here. So I put those in there. I put formatters, plain, codes, ranges, and that. Okay, so if I put all those in there, I'm just going to delete this. Whoops, I just want to delete it. Okay, so I'm going to turn this back on, but this time I'm going to put in these that were there by default. These were already in there by default when I looked at it. So if I do this, basically I'm recreating the default version. And I wanted to see that it works, right? So I'm going to save it, quit it, and I'm going to come back in. Go back into lint, and yes, I do have it complaining about Vim. Awesome. So I know with this file, it is working now. So let's go and let's tell it to stop complaining about Vim. Okay? And I'm going to leave love alone because I want to see this go away, but then go into the love file and see that it is still working. Because I don't want to break it. Okay, so Vim is no longer complaining here. So let's go back and look at love. Love should still be complaining. What did I do? Okay, yes. We got 22 complaints on the love file. Okay, so let's go back into the love one. Oh, I should have showed you as well. I didn't do it, but I should have showed you before that the linting was broken by. I could have changed like lint to like a different word, and it wouldn't have said anything. Like linting was completely turned off. It was not working at all. But anyway, I'm gonna put this here now. The love is here. Okay, so that's saved, and now we go into here, and hopefully we get no complaints at all. And I got no complaints. Okay. But is the LSP still working for love? Love dot, it looks great. Okay. So I wanted to show how linting works because other languages use linting. Even though Lua language server has its own lintings put in, I figured I didn't want to add other languages. I just wanted to do Lua because that's what nvconfig works in this video. So that's how you can use linting. You can switch it back to the other one, or you can even turn them both on just by uncommenting that one file. I'll show it to you. So if I wanted to turn on the other one, I would just go into LSP config, and right down here where it says enable equals false, this is diagnostics. This is the linting. If I put this to true or just comment it out, then this one will also be active. And I believe they can just be active together. You'll just get one or the other complains or both complain. I don't think it's really a big deal here. But this at least gives us Love 2D support right here. And I do have this turned off because the other linter is on, and it seems like it's a little bit better experience, but you can go either way. Okay, so that is linting. And that's why it's like this. Basically, I didn't know how to do this, and I couldn't find the answer anywhere. So as far as I know, nobody else has this working. I'm sure there are some smart people that do have it working, but they haven't shared that information with anybody else. But basically, it's kind of like trying to peer under the hood. What was the default set that I'm changing? Do I need to recreate that whole default? what was already in the table before? Can I inspect that table and find out what was in there so that I can modify it? Because I could find in Lua checks, I could find what I needed to do, and I could find for Love and Vim what I needed to do with globals, but I didn't know what was in this args table before that was working. So now that I could see what was working, I could just modify it. Okay, so the problem now with this whole setup is if I remove my the state and the share folders where all this stuff has been downloaded to, and I just have the config and I restart it up, these things don't automatically get installed. Now, I did have this set up at one point just to automatically install everything, but the problem with that is sometimes your LSP through your package manager is the one that you want to use. The one through Mason is broken or doesn't work correctly, like say with Haskell. I think there's also an issue with Clang. Clang doesn't work right, I believe, through Mason. It's better through the package manager. I can't remember which one, but so sometimes you want something configured here, but you don't want it to be actually downloaded through Mason. So you want something to be configured to be used, but it's actually from your system. So that is what we're going to do next. We're going to make it where we can automatically download and install all these packages, but we can also ignore some packages, still have them configured, but not have them downloaded. So we're going to be using some other kind of helper packages. And basically it's Mason, we have conform, we have LSP config, and we have lint. So there's going to be Mason conform, Mason LSP config, and Mason lint. And those are just going to be there to help install them. So the easiest one is the conform one. The conform one is very simple. We've already seen this kind of ad. We know that this is coming from GitHub right here. Mason conform. Very simple thing going on. And the configuration is extremely simple. This is amazing because it just works, and I like things that just work. So this is very simple. It just works. It installs everything automatically except anything you don't want it to install. You just put it in this ignored list. So if you didn't want it to automatically install Prettier, but you did want it to configure Prettier, there you go. This is what it does. So anything that's not in this list, it automatically installs if you're configuring it. Anything in the list, it's not going to install it, but it will still configure it. So if it's installed on your system, it's good. So we're basically just going to do this exactly the way it is. So I'm going to go here, and this is just basically what they have, except I've set this to very lazy. And the reason why is I want this to run. I don't care if it's in a buffer or not. I want it to run every time I start up NeoVim, but it doesn't need to run right away. It can be very lazy. It can run very late because basically this is just checking, do I need to install a package? I don't want it to run when, let's say this is conformed, so it's style Lua. I don't want it to try to download style Lua when I've entered a buffer where I need style Lua. What I want it to do is install style Lua when it's done starting up. And then it says, oh, you know what, style Lua is not installed. Well, let's install it. So then when I go to enter something that needs style Lua, it's installed. So that's why these are very lazy. All these Mason ones I'm going to do are very lazy. That means they're not run. I don't need to do something to make them run. They're automatically going to run, but they're going to do it late stage. They're not important. They're not going to slow my startup speed down. So this is going to go into plugins. And now all of these, I'm setting these beneath the whatever they're modifying. So this is conform. This is Mason conform. So I'm going to put it below Mason conform. Okay, there it is. Very simple thing. And there's going to be a config file called Mason conform. So let's save this and then go over here. And we'll make a new file. Whoops. Okay, we'll open that up, and it's very simple. It's just like right off the website what they said. Here's my ignored list. That's it. That's all I want it to do. Okay, so if I didn't have Style Lua installed right now, when I started up NeoVim, it would automatically install it. So let's see, can I... Oh yeah, there it is right now. Right now it's installing on the bottom. So whenever I start up a thing, it automatically will install it if it's not there. Now, if I didn't want it to install, I would put it in the ignore list. So that's very simple. I have the page for it on all of these, and the setup. It's very straightforward on that one. The next ones are not so straightforward because they're supposed to act the way that this is acting, but they don't work in practice. I could not get the other two. They have an automatic install where it can just automatically install, and then there's an ignored list. One of them has, I think, an ignored list, and the other one doesn't. But the auto install thing just never ever worked. Like it would work 1 out of 10 times, even though I had them starting in the right order. Part of it might be because other stuff is happening under the hood with NVChad. Maybe it's loading a module before another one. I'm not entirely sure, but if I tried it 10 times, it would do it once or twice correctly. And I just wanted to do the right thing. So instead of telling it to, so down here, you can have this automatic installation down here. You can set this to true, and it should work on its own. And it actually needs to be loaded before LSP config is loaded instead of after it. But again, I could not get it to do the correct thing where I was confident that it was going to do it. I mean, it wasn't even 50% of the time. So the other way to do it is actually have a curated list that you ensure it installs. So basically say, hey, here's the list of things I want installed. Can you install those? So because of that, I need a list coming in. But then I might have certain things that I don't want installed automatically because, again, they might be on the system. So I have this local table where anything I don't want to be automatically installed, I can put in here. So now I have this list that is being handed to me, but I need to check the list and remove whatever is on the ignored list. So that's what's going on here. This is saying all the servers that I want installed. It's checking that internal servers table that we created earlier that I put the Lua LS in. And it's going to go through that for each item in my list of servers that are installed. Make sure it's not in this list of items that need to be ignored. If it's not in the list of items, then we're going to add it to this new table that is all servers. That takes a list of all servers that I'm configuring, removing the ones I want ignored, and then I'm passing that off to ensure installed. And this is going to install all of those. And I'm turning off the automatic installation that would just install everything. This is just a loop going through all the servers that I'm passing to it that we've created in that when I was saying that I was creating the table inside of LSP config. That's here, right here. I'm getting that from right here. Up here, I'm loading this package. I'm getting this LSP config, and inside of that is that servers list. So I'm going through that whole list of things, and for each item in the thing, I'm making sure it's not in here. Now, the way I check if it's not in here is this helper function. That is another loop because this is also a list checking to make sure that item. So this is just a helper function. Lua doesn't have a direct way to check to see if something is in a table or not. So you have to iterate through the whole table. So this one is iterating through a whole table of things, and for each item in the table, it's saying if it's in this list, which it's using this function to iterate through that table to compare the value. If it's not in the list, it then adds it to a new table called all servers, and then passes that down. So I know it's complicated, but this is the only way I could get it to do the thing that I wanted to do every single time. And if you have anything on your system that you don't want installed through Mason, you want it on your system, you add it to this list. It still gets configured, but Mason is not going to install it. Okay, so I know that's quite complicated. I'm just going to put this code in. So this is the Mason lsp config.lua. Okay. So this is just giving me access to LSP config by loading it. This is just a table of whatever I want to not be installed automatically. This is my helper function to see if the value is in the table. That's all this is. It's just a generic helper function. This is the loop using that helper function. It's looping through my whole table of servers and then checking each server to see if it's not in that ignore list by using this helper function. And if it's not, it's adding it to the all servers. And then it's making sure all servers is installed, and I'm turning off the automatic one because that was completely unreliable. So this would be filled up with whatever you want on your system. So I'm going to write that. I'm not going to reload it. I'm just going to continue on to the next one. It's very much the same story. I did put the Mason LSP config in, right? So I need to add the Mason LSP config here. And there's nothing new happening with this one. I'm putting it underneath it. Now, if you were trying to do the automatic thing, you would actually want it loaded before it. But again, I could not get it to do that reliably. So I'm putting it below it. And what's happening here is this is going to use a table that is being created in this one. And that's just the table that I'm creating. And I'll show you that table. See right here, this table. This is a table I'm creating, and I'm sticking it inside of LSP config. So this servers table, I'm sticking it in there. And then when I go to here, I'm pulling it back out. I'm pulling that right here. That table, I'm pulling it out here. So I'm going to save this one. So here is NVIM LSP config, and here's Mason LSP config. And this one is set to very lazy because this thing needs to load. It needs to at least be loaded when you're reading a buffer or making a new file. This one, I just want it to happen eventually when you start up. It could be the last thing that happens. I don't care. But I want it to always happen. I want it to check to make sure it needs to install something. Okay, so I'm going to save that. And I did a capital W. I do that all the time. Okay, so the next one is the exact same thing. Pretty much. But with this one, the loop is a little bit more complicated. I'll just show it to you. I'm going to copy it in. This is Mason lint. So this one, I'm going to put it under the lint right here. And it's the same thing, very lazy, same idea. Nothing's, all of these Mason ones, I put them all on very lazy. They're all doing the exact same thing. And this is very similar to the other one. I'll just show it to you. This one I didn't need to make the table. The table already exists for me. So I'm just using it. So A here and Mason. And this one's going to be called lint. So what's going on with this one is there's already a table that exists when you're in lint here. This table already exists. And it's key value pairs, which becomes a problem because you need to separate the key value. And also, that's not actually the problem, the key value pair. The problem is you might have multiple things in here. You might have another one here too, you know, Bob's check or something. I don't know. Lua you might have multiple linters installed for Lua. So because of this idea that you might have multiple, we need to take care of that as well. So in here, I am doing the same thing, creating a local ignored list. I have the same exact helper function right here. That's just checking if the table contains an item. Nothing's changed. It's the exact same function. And down here, I'm going through the key value pairs. But when I get the value from the key value pairs, so that I'm calling V, that is actually could be a table in itself that could have multiple values inside of it. And so I need to check each one of those as a linter if it's not in the ignored list. And if it's not, then I'm going to add it to the all linters list. And then I'm passing the all linters list in exactly like the other one. And I'm telling the auto installation to be turned off. So exact same thing's going on. It's just the fact that each one of these values can be a table in itself that has multiple values inside of it. This is all in place now. I'm going to restart it. And if I get no errors, I'm going to wipe it, everything except the config, and let it start up from boot and see if it does everything to the way that it was just set up. Just closing all these. Okay, so let's see if it's installing those 2 packages that we just put there. And I think that's done. Look at Mason. Mason still got these, the 3 items that we want there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the local state in Vim, and I'm going to remove the local share in Vim. I'm also going to look at another file real quick. This lazy lock JSON, I'm going to remove that too. Okay, so basically this would be, what's in here right now would just be the config as it is. So it's the configuration, but nothing installed. So now when I start up, it's going to start downloading packages. It's going to change the theme. It's going to install all the tree sitter languages. Then it's going to install style Lua. It's going to install Lua LS, and it's going to install Lua check. It's going to get just going to set everything up for me. I'm not going to have to do anything. Okay, if it works. Let's see. Okay, here we go. This is the standard. It's kind of getting things up and running. Now we got 10 different tree sitter things, languages being installed. Our theme has changed. Now at the bottom, we got style Lua, we got Lua LS, and Lua check. They're all being installed automatically. If I just close this and I look at Mason, and I got my LSP is installed, I got my linter is installed, and I got my formatter installed. Okay, so what if I close this? What if we just open a file? Just open anything here. So language server is working. It's not complaining it's not installed. Let's see if our linter is working. That looks good. Whoops. How did it do that? Let's see about formatting. That looks good. The we can check on ChatRC, and we're still in the Capuchin, because why would that have changed? I mean, we haven't changed any of these things, so there would all be the same anyway. The options that would already be the same. Let's go into the love. We don't have any complaints. Cause a problem. There we go. Let's see if we can go to, let's go this love here, and let's go GD. That works pretty good. Go to definition. It just went to the definition. This is not inside the project I'm in. I just went go to definition of love, and it went there. So that the language server is definitely working. The linter is working. The formatter is working. It's not giving me any unnecessary complaints. The tree sitter is working. Let's see what TS is installed. Install info. And we got C installed, bash. There's fish. Lua doc, markdown inline, Python. I'm not sure why Python's installed, but okay. Query, Pommel, and I know YAML. There's YAML, there's Vim doc. So that's all good. And that should be exactly where we were at. Now what happens is hopefully you understand kind of some of the stuff that I went through to set this up, and kind of how I was able to overcome some of it. Although, you know, it always feels a little bit like a magic box, a black box that I can't see inside of, and I don't know what's happening. But at least now you know that you're looking for highlighting through TreeSitter. Your LSP config is your language server that might also be doing other things. It might be formatting and linting as well. You have the linter through, and we have conform doing formatting, and how to set those up, how to configure it, how to kind of look through some of the issues that you might have. But yeah, some of the issues I had to go through, and I just wanted it set up for Lua. I will make some other videos later for specific languages. This was a lot of research into this, and figuring out and kind of trying to document the problems along the way and how I was able to overcome some of them, and the kind of commands that I had to use to kind of find out what the issues were. So I hope this kind of documentation helps a bit for anybody else having issues, and what each part of this whole system does. So yeah, hope that was everything. That's a very long video. Sorry about that. This is, I've been spending the last couple weeks, probably, I mean the last week, pretty hard researching this one even more, even after I was already using it. And I couldn't actually find anybody with videos on NVChad 2.5. Again, they did breaking changes, and then there was the null ls deprecation change as well. And so the information is a bit hard to come by, and kind of they assume that you know everything that's happening. The stuff is written by people who already know how the bits work with each other, because they may be writing the actual packages themselves. So that's not really helpful to the rest of us when we don't know what a lot of these things do and how they work together. So I hope that helps a little bit for anybody out there that's also trying to figure these same things out. And it's a long video, so I'm going to end it here, and hope you guys have a good day. Bye.